Hey there. For this video I put together a quick diorama because I just wanted to play around with water and movement of water and see if I could actually pull it off, and I think I did. I really like this. It's not a spectacular looking diorama, but as a photographic piece it's amazing. I am over the moon at how well this turned out, and the movement of the water and the light that goes through it. It's just excellent. So anyone after something like that for a photographic piece, this is definitely right up your alley. I hope you enjoy the video, and I do hope you get something from this. I started this diorama out by drawing up a template. I gauged the size of everything by the vehicle that I used. And I used this packing foam, just some styrofoam. I don't know what it's from, but you know, it's good in sheets. Glue it down together. I got the depth that I wanted for the base of the diorama. And a bit of foam core board for the top, because it's just it's much nicer to work with the foam core than it is styrofoam. It's a bit, it's a bit funny. I want to check that everything fits nice and tidy. It's not perfect, but it'll do. I cut this corner off, and I'm going to use that now as a template so I can do the footpath and the grass and the gutter and that sort of thing. You notice that this diorama is at an angle. I'm not sure where I got the idea from. It just sort of came to me when I was playing around with it, because I realised that a straight up and down road it wouldn't photograph well. It just would look awful. And I just managed to pull this off by making a template like this. Just drew it up and then cut it out, and then made a second one out of this one. And then I just put them one corner across from the other, and it worked out. I mean, it's not exactly perfect, but you can't tell. And the angle works really nicely, so I can get everything in one photograph from the front angle. It's nice. I was very happy once I decided how I was going to have the layout. And just peel it off. Before I go gluing it down, I'm just going to draw in some detail. So I wouldn't use styrofoam for the actual base for the working on, because it just, I don't know, I've never even worked with styrofoam, but I don't like it. But it's all right for filler. You see I've drawn in just a very rough footpath. I guesstimated the size. Same with the gutter. It's just that added detail. And there's just the drain hole I cut into it. I just very, very carefully cut along the joining line of the foam core. I didn't measure these either. I just kind of guessed how deep they would look. Knowing I wouldn't paint inside there being black, you wouldn't be able to tell how deep it is anyway. It's quite fragile, so this was a very carefully done job. It's these little tiny details that really are so quick and easy, but add a great amount of interest to a diorama. You can see it's not very deep, but once it's glued down and it's dark on the base around it, you won't notice that it's as shallow as it is. And that's it, ready to start painting. I'm just going to put a very flat black onto this. It's just one of those cheap house paints that you get. Just a flat acrylic. I'd never use anything shiny for a base. I'd avoid it. I wouldn't use cheap acrylics out the tube. And now just some grey. I'm just unloading my brush. I don't want too much on here, because if I put too much paint on, I'm going to fill in all those little tiny impressions in the foam. I don't use foam core board very often, but it's not bad to work with. It's just a bit fragile, but it's really cheap, and really easy to buy, unlike the XPS. I'm just stippling very lightly all over the road. I want it to be uneven. I want to avoid making patterns. I spin the brush around as I paint and make it patchy, heavy in some places. And just keep doing this until the entire surface is nicely covered. Now I'm just going to use a lighter grey. It looks like white, but it's not. It's just a very light grey. Again, unloading the brush so I don't go filling in all those little impressions. And I'm just going to do it across the footpath and up the gutters. I'm doing this quite roughly, but I'm going to do a dark wash on it later, so it doesn't really matter. And there's also going to be grass and dirt and that sort of thing, so it won't matter too much later if it's a little bit roughly done at the moment. And I can also use a dark pencil to fill in the lines if I accidentally go between the cracks on the footpath. Neatly along the gutter, and now some PVA glue so I can put down some soil. I just like to spread it evenly with my fingers so it gets a nice sort of even layer, and then just sprinkle on my lovely brown dust. I've been using this jar of dirt for about 2 years now. It seems to never run out. It's so fine. It just adds a nice texture. I like it. Better than brown paint. Back into the jar it goes. See you in 2 years. That looks good. And now I'm going to put a dark sort of a blackish, watery solution. Well, it's not solution, it's just paint and water. And I'm just going to put it on the footpath. You can see it going nicely into the greyish paint and the little indentations, which really emphasise the texture. It darkens things up and dirties it up and makes it look a little bit more natural and not so brand new. And around the gutter and down in the drain and all over the road as well, just sort of stippling it and dropping it and then picking it up with my finger and moving it around so it's completely uneven. I just want it to look like a bit of wear and tear and dirt. And now it's time for some static grass, which is just beautiful stuff. I love it. Absolutely love static grass. I'm going to put the glue on sort of sporadically. I don't want it to be an even layer the way the dirt was put down because I want patchiness in the grass. Just going to put a U-hook into the side of the diorama to earth my applicator. And just pop down a really nice layer of the static grass. It has to be the nicest thing you can use on a diorama. It's just so natural and beautiful. I love it. Back into the jar for that one as well. I painted the sides of the diorama because the unevenness of the white foam was really throwing me off and I couldn't get perspective. I painted the gutter on the ground and I also put a line up the centre of the road with a pencil because I wanted to put a white line down with paint, but I didn't want to stuff it up, so I thought I'd draw it in first, and that way I could erase it if I did it incorrectly, because knowing me, I would have made a mistake. I just put down this tape. I think it's painter's tape, so it won't stick to the diorama and peel off the paint. I did it as evenly as I could. I eyeballed it like everything else. And then a nice heavy layer of white paint. I wanted it to be nice and heavy and thick, so it would be slightly raised, like a line in the middle of the road is. You know, after years of being repainted and the build-up of paint, I was trying to achieve that. I actually did wait until this dried before I peeled the paint off. I had to use a little bit of patience, knowing that I probably would have ruined it if I hadn't waited. And it still came out a little uneven. The paint seems to have bled underneath the tape in a few places, so I sharpened up my black pencil and I ran along the edge of it. I thought, seeing as I'm doing this to neaten it up, I might as well do it quite heavy and create a shadow to add more depth to that white line as well, to make it more prominent and just, make it neat, and it worked quite well. So that's the diorama base ready to play with. I love the angle. I know it's going to work. When I was looking at this, I realised I was onto something. And so here is Lolita. I really like this. I printed it out at my library onto a bit of paper, and here's my sign. I printed her out and then I cut the paper or the cardboard to size. And I just put some corrugated cardboard on the back to make it look sort of like an old style billboard that would be corrugated iron. I glued them down, gave it a spray of black, and then a rough coat of grey on the back, just so I can get that corrugated iron look. I want it to look old and rusty, so I did this roughly and very lightly, sort of dusting it really. I just call it a heavy dry brush. I really don't want painting the corrugations or I'll lose the darkness. I just popped some brown down after that, and just sort of areas where I felt like it would be rusted, from water running down, like in between the join and that sort of thing. And then just a red ochre on top of that, sort of going inwardly so it becomes smaller and smaller with the rust points. And then just sort of an orange on top of that, going smaller again on the red ochre. That was really bad description. I'm sorry. I hope that the visual will explain it better than I just did. But you can see what's happening. It's really basic. It's very quick and easy, but it looks really nice. And no one's going to be looking at the back of the sign anyway. Now it's all ready to attach Lolita. I glued her down and I put a couple of skewers in, and with the trimming of the signs, I just put some black coffee stirrer around. I sliced them in half so they're a bit thinner. I just wanted to tidy it up. I thought if I'm going to go to this sort of trouble, I might as well go that extra mile and just make it really nice and neat. And I'm glad I did, because you can't see the edges of the cardboard. It's just a nice, easy sign. And now to put her down into the ground, so I can really start getting an idea of how the diorama is going to look. I made this little sign because this is just part of the innuendo. I was going to put a speed sign up, and I saw this when I was looking for ones to print out. I thought, yep, that will do nicely. It's just a piece of cardboard with it stuck on it and a toothpick for the post. I mean, it's more of a photographic piece, so I'm not trying to be super realistic when it comes to anything in the back or it being a 360 kind of view. And the car, I got it from a charity store and it's a little bit chipped up, so I thought I'd touch it up. I got this paint pen. I've had this paint pen for years, and it, for some reason, was just magically the same colour. I couldn't even distinguish between the two, so that was very lucky. It just allowed me to very quickly touch up the car. I didn't want to have to respray it or anything like that. It would have taken me a lot of time. Plus, on this scale, I would have lost a lot of the detail using a rattle can on this. It's the little things, you do these little things and your work looks so much better. Now time in for the placement, so I can figure out where I'm going to put my water spout. I wanted to make sure I've got enough room for the water to be jutting out of the ground and running down onto the gutter and that sort of thing. And the height, which I guessed would be around 3 times the height of the car. my measuring in my head. I just painted the skewer white, and now it's time to make the fire hydrant. I used a piece of polymer clay that I rolled into a log, and I rounded the top, and that's it. I mean, I used a pencil to make a few markings in the top of it, but that was about all. I used this zip tie to go around it for detail, because I was literally trying to get out of having to make this, because I was dreading it, thinking how difficult it would be, and it turned out to be the greatest little thing I think I've ever made. I just put the zip tie around. I know the detail isn't correct, but I don't care. It looks so good. Oh, here's a pro tip. Yeah, glue your little glue bottles down onto something so you don't knock them over all the time. I knocked it over so many times I had to do something about it. I glued this down onto a little thing. I don't know what it is. It came with some secondhand buttons in a jar, but it's the right size. Some beads for the detail on the hydrant. I chose them because, again, they were the right size. And these little black things, they're like a little half round thing. I don't know what they are, but they worked, so I stuck them on there. And one on the top. I'll put the rough side facing away where no one can see it. I sprayed it black and then realised that I needed another one on there. So I put that one on. I think that's the main one. So I sprayed it again. And then I was very, very happy with it. I love this. It's just, geez, it came out good. Really came out good. I thought it was going to come out looking pretty bad, but I'm happy with it. I put a couple of coats of red paint on it, and looking at it now in the photograph, you can see that it's not red enough. I mean, I could touch it up, but I don't know if I care enough, because I know that I'm going to repurpose everything in this diorama, because I didn't really want to keep it as a diorama. I just wanted to see if I could actually pull off the entire thing, and I got what I wanted out of it, so I will reuse the bits off it. I'm going to place the fire hydrant into the ground. You notice I'm not really gluing much of anything down because I do want to reuse stuff. And the skewer, I painted it green, so it will be camouflaged with the grass. So you won't be able to see what's holding up the fire hydrant. I'm just going to angle it into the ground. I initially was going to try and make a diorama where the front of the car was crumpled and all that sort of thing, and it was just mission impossible. I mean, trying to get a dent into a die-cast car I couldn't even dent it with a hammer. So I decided to change tactics and angle over the hydrant. So it looks like it's just nudged it over, and the water's coming up. I'm going to put down the car. I have glued a skewer into the base of the car because I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to glue it down and have glue on the wheels. It's a beautiful little piece, and I'd like to use it again in something more serious than this. I'm going to get it as close as I can to the skewer. It's starting to look like a diorama. You can see that angle. It's really great. Open up the doors. I love playing with dioramas. It's like a little kid with toys and dolls and things. It's nice. Now it's time to start making the water. To make the water, I used this scourer. I usually use these scourers for things like tree canopies to put foliage on. And knowing that, I had the idea because I saw someone making a video. They used cotton balls, though, to do this. And I came up with this one because I knew that it would be strong, and it already has sort of like movement or water in it. And after feeling it, using it for tree canopies, I knew it would be strong and light and wistful looking. So I went and bought this scourer and started peeling it back. There's so many layers in this. You could get water for 50 dioramas, I'd reckon. I didn't even use one entire sheet for the whole thing, and I had leftovers. It can be tough to pull this off, but just keep pulling it away and pulling it away until you get a piece off there. That's about half the sheet that I got, so I used that, and then I just sort of fluff out the edges and pull it apart, because I don't want straight angles, though the straight angle could have worked nicely going up and down the actual skewer. But I didn't do it that way because this is a first for me. I was just making it up as I went. You just keep pulling it apart as much as you can. I've just made a nice sort of a web with it. You could really have this dense or even finer depending on the scale of your diorama and the sort of water you wanted to use. I think it'd be great on waves as well, for the crests of waves. Now I'm going to just pull it apart so I can start arranging it and treating it with a bit of epoxy. I did 3 different types as I was experimenting, and this was putting it down on flat plastic. I put it on the flat plastic for the first one because I did want some pieces to be on the ground so it would look like water running, and I knew that putting it on flat plastic it would start pooling underneath the scourer material. So I just sort of dabbed it here and there, lighter and heavier in different places, just so I could see what would happen, and also I would have different pieces to choose from to make sure that I got what I wanted from it. I didn't want it to keep mixing the epoxy and playing around with it, so I did a whole lot in one go. This is just stuff off a tray, just a plastic tray, and I did one on the inside which had deeper little wells in it. You could see they kind of, they filled, and it was very difficult to get out. So doing it on the other side, these are those chunks like that. I mean, you wouldn't want that amongst it. You do it on the other side, and it didn't have that. It was just nice and shallow, and it pulled away, but it still gave me a nice uneven effect. And I think if you probably used aluminium foil and cling wrap with the foil on the bottom and the wrap on the top, you would get a similar effect of just crumpling it lightly so the epoxy will sit in little recesses, but not flat and not deep recesses. And then I just dabbed it on here as well, just heavier in sections, lighter in others, and just playing around with it because I want it to look natural. It's got to be uneven, and this could be greatly perfected. The fact that it turned out so good the first time is a little bit of a shock to me, which means this has great potential. But just play around with it. I mean, you could probably do an awful lot with this. I mean, even imagine on a diorama on a very small scale, you could make water coming out of a hose, even a little garden hose, if you just are mindful for the amount of epoxy that you put in there. They just form like little tiny crystals, so they look fantastic. After it's cured, I just pulled it off, and you could see these are the glassy looking pieces from the flat plastic, which you couldn't use in an upright spout or anything, but it's good to sit on the ground so the water looks like it's pooling and moving at the same time. And these are the pieces from inside the tray, which was difficult to pull out because of those deep wells. A lot of them didn't want to come out. It just kind of just made it awkward, really. Most of them stayed inside the tray. You can see it there, it's kind of filled with the little pieces of resin. It's come out quite good. The whole thing is that when you see it in light, it looks a lot better. And so there's little tiny pieces that are attached here and there and everywhere, like little tiny crystals. And that's the whole premise of putting the epoxy resin in and not just gluing on a lump of scourer. I'm just going to put down some super glue and start arranging it. I thought I'd start from the top and go down so I could sort of get a handle on how it's going to look. Also had a picture of a burst fire hydrant to go by, not just working out of my imagination. And I just kept trimming it as I went and just, put bits on, take bits off. It's just kind of a layering because it is a 360 thing. I didn't want just a front view, so I just went around it bit by bit. It's a bit like setting up a Christmas tree or something. I just had to keep putting bits on I'm trying to build it so it was a little bit bigger at the top. You can see the skewer in there, so I sandwiched it together on both sides, and then I built around the sides so it would be rounded and not, flat like a sandwich. And just keep poking at it and playing with it and cutting bits off. There's a great big lump there. It's coming together. It's starting to get that movement. You can see it looks like it's forcefully coming up. And I've started putting pieces out to feather it out a little bit to make it look as though the water is dispersing. Just going to keep adding little pieces as I go. Once that skewer's covered, it's easy. Here's a piece for the ground so I could see how it would look, and I just laid it down. I didn't glue this one down. Well, I did later, just not for the footage. But you can see it just sits really tidily on the ground. It just the way it drops off the gutter. I put a piece of the flat one in the front here, with a bit of wood glue underneath it, or PVA glue. You can see it coming out there, but I will use that as part of it. And this is starting to look like a tree. I gave it a trim. It was just starting to look the wrong shape, so I cut it again and then sort of reshaped it. You just got to keep working on this so it doesn't, look strange. I think if it was the wrong shape, it probably would start looking again like a scour instead of actual water. So you've got to keep nature in mind when you're doing this. Just keep pushing it together. It looks fragile, but it's not. It's just not unlike Velcro. This stuff really sticks together. Just more little pieces building out. And then some more of the glue on the ground so I can have some connectivity between the pieces and the ground. And it'll dry crystal clear as well. It's really starting to come together. It was at this point that I could see in the footage that it was working, and I was really excited. It's like you can't get a bad angle with this stuff. It's really great. I thought I'd stick some track marks or skid marks on the road, just to add some interest to the diorama drama when he's hastily put the brakes on. It's not perfect, but it's all right. Just some little bushes that I made. I actually pulled this off an old diorama as well. I thought, looks good. And now, happy couple. Yeah, I'm just going to put them on. They're just some really cheapy little figures that I painted up. I bought like 100 of them for $10 online. So I pop them in different dioramas now and then. They're not fantastic, but they give the idea and the impression that something is going on. And she ain't happy. Just pop him in there. Straighten up, man. Here she comes. Quickly up behind him to assess the damage. I just put some foam core board siding on this just for the sake of the video. I mean, I'm not going to go to any trouble because I know this is not going to be a display piece. This was just a play piece. But just to tidy it up, and yeah, looks all right. And that's it done. It's so beautiful. I filmed this outside very roughly, I'm sorry. It was difficult to do. But look at that, there's sunlight going through it, and you can see those little bits of epoxy resin sitting there, and Lolita. Oh, I hope I don't get demonetized for that image, but we'll find out. They look great. It looks very like it's been like old footage, the way I've accidentally filmed it that way, but it's worked out well. My shonky filming has been worthwhile this time. It came out beautiful. I'm very happy with it. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time.